Good evening, everyone. I humbly acknowledge that the land in which you live, learn, work, and play is Treaty 8 territory, traditional lands of the Korean Dene, and unceded territory of the Métis. And can I have someone make the motion to reconvene in public? Councillor Grandison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the meeting reconvene in public.
Can I have someone second the motion? Councillor Ball.
I second that motion.
All in favor? Anyone opposed? Seeing that's carried unanimously. Before we adopt the agenda, is anyone who wishes to serve notice of motion? For those who know the motion, please press your microphone button and raise your hand. I'm not seeing any. Can I have someone make the motion to adopt the agenda? Councillor Stroud.
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. I move that the agenda be adopted as presented.
And can I have someone second that motion? Councillor Walkwin.
I second that motion.
Are there any amendments to the agenda? I'm not seeing any. I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Not seeing any. That's carried unanimously. Moving on to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? Hearing none, can I have someone make that motion? Councillor Weigel.
I move that the recommendations contained in items 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and 4.4 be approved.
And can I have someone second that motion? Councillor Stroud.
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. I second that motion.
And again, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Not seeing any. It's carried unanimously. We'll now move on to council business. First up, we have the social media policy, and I'd like to invite Matthew Harrison, Director of Communications and Engagement, to introduce a report.
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. Good evening, members of council. For the record, my name is Matthew Harrison. I'm the Director of Communications and Engagement, and I'm here to present the proposed revised social media policy PRC 140. And for this presentation, I'm joined by our Manager of Strategic Communications, Megan Langpap. It's under Megan's branch that the social media is managed and coordinated. The social media policy was originally approved by council in 2016 and is before council as part of the regular organizational policy review process. As outlined in the council report, this policy provides the foundation for consistent use of social media by the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo. The rmwb manages 13 unique social media accounts for the purposes of releasing official and authorized municipal communications to residents and stakeholders. We have a very strong social media presence, and we are well regarded in our sector for that presence. In fact, recently Hootsuite, a leading platform for social media management, benchmarked our social media properties in comparison to 73 other government organizations, and the results found us to be leaders in our sector, well beyond the tactical and strategic stage of other government organizations. In fact, in benchmarking, our channels double and in some cases triple our peers in brand building and management, audience relationships, and business results. All that is to say, our policy, procedures, and processes have put us in a strong position to share and receive information online. Social Media Policy PRC 140 establishes guidelines for designated employees that ensures social media is used in an appropriate, effective, and secure manner, and is in accordance with all applicable laws, regulation, and legislation. Please note, this policy applies to the management and usage of our municipal social media accounts. The policy does not cover employee behavior on social media. That is found under the municipality's Code of Conduct, Directive HRM 600D. As this is an existing policy with only minor changes such as updating and clarifying language and technology, administration recommends that Social Media Policy PRC 140, dated May 10th, 2022, as outlined in Attachment 1, be approved. And that concludes my presentation, and we would be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, Matthew. Does any councillors have any questions? Councillor Dogar?
Thank you very much, sir, for giving me the opportunity. Thank you very much. I just want to ask you, sir, this policy for municipality, it would be equally good for everybody. Everybody would be given equal chance. Why I asked this question? On 3rd of February, there was some misunderstanding on the social media by regional municipality website, and a lot of problems came. Oh, everybody knows it. I came here. I went to the this place. I was not given the opportunity, time to clarify my position. I then talked to then CEO, and he also didn't do it and gave me the opportunity. But after a while, another honorable member, his statement was issued. So such like differences, such like discrimination should not be done. This is my point of view.
Through the chair to Councillor Dogar. Yes, the policy applies just to the management of the municipal accounts. So any information that we would be putting out as it relates to sharing information on municipal services, activities, any kind of campaigns, that kind of thing, as well as news releases and statements that may come from council, such as from the mayor. Thanks.
Did you have another question, Councillor Dogar?
It's okay. We'll discuss more and more. For the time being, this short answer. For the time being, this short answer is sufficient.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dogar. Councillor Stroud?
Thank you, Mayor Bowman, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your presentation. It is mentioned in the social media policy that it ensures communication through social media and compliance with the municipality's Code of Conduct Directive. Does administration's Code of Conduct Directive differ from council's Code of Conduct?
Through the chair to Councillor Stroud, I'm not an expert on council's Code of Conduct. However, I imagine that at least for the employee code of conduct, there aren't specific sections that talk about, say, social media, but it talks about different things that could relate to things being shared on social media, such as confidentiality, respect of coworkers, and things like that. So in that sense, it could apply, but I couldn't speak authoritatively on that. Sorry.
Okay, so does the Code of Conduct Directive policy only go through administration, or does it need to be passed by council? I'm a little confused on your policy here.
Through the chair to Councillor Stroud, I would have to defer to our interim CEO.
Through the chair to Councillor Stroud, that policy would come to council for approval, not the directive if there was an administrative directive attached to it, but the code of conduct policy, if there is one, would come to council.
Even though it's for administration?
That's right.
Okay, thank you. So I read the statement is in this policy. These accounts are administrative accounts and not accounts of elected officials. Was that in the previous policy?
Through the chair to Councillor Stroud, yes, it was. We are only managing the municipality's accounts. We're not managing individual councillor accounts or the mayor.
Okay, that's understandable. So as we're discussing the social media policy, can you please explain what forms of communication do you feel are most effective for the rural communities specific to Ward 4? What time?
Through the chair to Councillor Stroud, in terms of social media?
Yes, in terms of communication, if you're having an open house or...
Okay. Through the chair to Councillor Stroud, I'll start off and then maybe Megan Langpap can add a few other items. I know certainly Facebook is a very popular form of communication for a number of the rural communities. There's several rural Facebook pages, so I know that's one way that we certainly share information. Beyond social media, I know the different signage coming into communities is quite popular as well. Megan, if you have anything further to add.
Thank you, Councillor Stroud. I would just add that we also rely on our rural newsletters. So those are managed monthly by our Indigenous and Rural Relations Department, and we contribute to those. We would place advertisements in those, any promotions for open houses, initiatives. We also rely on radio and rural. So Mix 103.7 and Rogers and CFWE. And also, Councillor Stroud, we appreciate whenever you're sharing our posts. We know you have a pretty good following to Ward 4. So thank you.
Yes, I just want to say that we're very challenged with social media applications like Twitter and Instagram. We don't have the rural connectivity or to have those platforms at the present time. And I will say that other RMWB departments have used the welcome sign in the community. You know, you can put the sign up there, and the rural newsletter, as you said, Megan, and mobile signage, which is quite effective. And I want to thank these departments, which include Public Works and Engineering, because they do use those for their communication in the rural areas. Thank you. And I did mention that I want to thank the RMWB for putting forward funding in the budget to improve our process of providing this essential service of connectivity in rural hamlets. Thank you again.
Thank you, Councillor Stroud. Councillor Benjoko.
Thank you, Mayor Bowman, and thank you for the presentation. I was going through the document that you sent to us to review, and I saw crossing out a few items and adding some and all that, and it's quite almost cumbersome for me to know what exactly you are extracting or adding, other than the easy ones like you added TikTok, because maybe it wasn't existing when this policy was originally developed. I just want to know if you can share the key ad or the key message you are trying to give a layman or give to public in terms of changes that we need to expect.
Certainly, through the chair to Councillor Banjoko. There are actually very minor changes in this policy. It is mostly related to language, cleaning up some of the phrasing, some best practices. It is things like getting rid of older social media platforms that may not exist anymore, Tumblr, for instance, and adding things like a Snapchat or a TikTok. Okay. It also includes updating and adding information related to things like FOIP. But the general application of the policy is as it was when it was originally presented and passed in 2016.
Okay, thank you. That's what I found. I just want to be sure I didn't miss anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benjoko. Councillor Stroud.
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. I just have one more question. I was curious, why is stakeholder relations being removed from the policy?
Through the chair to Councillor Stroud, that's a legacy piece of an old name of a department. So this department used to be formerly Communications and Stakeholder Relations. We're now Communications and Engagement.
Thank you, Matthew.
Sure.
And Councillor Benjoko, do you have another question?
Stroud, I was reluctant to ask why Deputy CAO is completely removed. Maybe that should go to CAO or Mayor. Thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor Banjoko, that position right now doesn't exist, so that's why. So if it did come back, then we would put it back into the policy.
Are there any other questions from council? I'm not seeing any, so thank you very much. Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Megan.
Thank you.
Can I have someone make the motion? Councillor Benjoko.
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. I move that the social media policy PRC 140, dated May 10th, 2022, as outlined in attachment 1, be approved.
Thank you. Have someone second the motion. Councillor Stroud.
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. I second the motion.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? I'm not seeing any, so I'll call for a vote. All in favor? And is there any opposed? Not seeing any. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Next up, we have public engagement policy, and I'd like invite Matthew to stay seated. Direct Communication Engagement, to introduce the report.
I guess I won't be getting my steps in tonight. Thank you, Mayor Bowman. Once again, good evening, members of council. For the record, my name is Matthew Harrison. I'm the Director of Communications and Engagement, and I'm here now to present the proposed revised Public Engagement Policy, PRC 130. And for this presentation, I'm joined by our Manager of Public Engagement, Nadia Power, and it's under Nadia's branch that we run all our public engagement out of. The Public Engagement Policy is the foundation for the regional municipality Wood Buffalo's public engagement work. This policy was originally approved by Council in 2016 and is before Council as part of the regular organizational policy review process. In 2016, Council passed this policy to formalize the municipality's commitment to providing public engagement opportunities within the region. The policy has also served to satisfy the requirement of Alberta's Municipal Government Act, Section 216.1, that requires all municipalities in Alberta to have a public participation policy. The RMWB's public engagement policy establishes the importance of engaging in purposeful and meaningful dialogue with the public and creating opportunities for sharing information and gathering feedback on municipal services, projects, and initiatives. This in turn supports and informs the organization's decision-making process and helps shape the work that the municipality undertakes. The policy before you this evening has been updated to reflect current practices and processes that administration has undertaken over the last 6 years. Sections related to general procedures on public engagement, such as when engagement is considered and using a framework to determine the level of engagement, have been added or updated. Additionally, a section has been added that takes into consideration the Indigenous and Rural Relations Department's Protocol Agreement Initiative, and that Indigenous engagement is captured in those agreements. Otherwise, the core of this policy remains, and this proposed version features updates to language and terms, captures more accurately the work we're already doing, and aligns with the organization's current policies and practices. Therefore, administration recommends that the Public Engagement Policy, PRC 130, dated May 10th, 2022, as outlined in Attachment 1, be approved. And that concludes my presentation. We would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Matthew. And do we have any delegates for this item? There's none. Any questions from council? Councillor Dogar?
Thank you, sir, through the chair. Sir, fine, it's a good presentation that you gave, but I feel that public engagement is the most important in the democratic setup of any community, because we all are the representatives of the public. We must be getting any feedback. We must be consulting them before coming here. And now the presently agenda which is given, that is on Friday evening, and the Tuesday we have to discuss it. It is a less small period, short period. It should be more, at least 1 week, so that we can go. Now, there was a discussion before that on taxi bylaws. I could go to only one taxi company, leading company, Sun Taxi. I couldn't consult the other week small companies also. So that more time should be given. That is what I feel. Thank you.
I think that's a little off topic, Councillor Dogar, but I'm not if Matthew has anything to add.
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. Through the chair to Councillor Dogar, I was just going to say that that's related actually more to the legislative process of posting the agendas for what's upcoming in the meeting ahead. So this would be more akin what we're talking about with the public engagement policy, is when we have more of a longer, wider spanning campaign on specific topics. So you mentioned the vehicle for hire, for instance. So we've started engagement on that, and there is an engagement open for it. So we are talking to different stakeholders and different groups and community members, and then we'll be bringing that feedback back to council. But I believe the section that you may have been referring to at the beginning of your comments relates more specific to the agenda, which would be with the legislative services.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dogar. Councillor Weigel?
Thanks you, Matt and Nadia. I just, great presentation. I'm all for it. I just wanted to publicly acknowledge you guys again and just say thank you again to Nadia. What a great job your team is doing. The engagement at Sapri was awesome. And again, I know I did it last council meeting, but now that you're here, I just want to publicly say thank you and what a great job you did. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weigel. Are there any other questions from council? I'm not seeing any. Can I have someone make the motion? Councillor Grandison?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the public engagement policy PRC-130 dated May 10th, 2022, as outlined in attachment 1 be approved.
Thank you. Can I have someone second the motion? Councillor Banjoko?
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. I second that motion.
Thank you. Was there any other questions or debate points from council? I'm not seeing any. I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Is there any opposed? Not seeing it. It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Nadia. Next, we have the intervenor status, designated industrial property assessment complaints. I'd like to invite Chris Harris, Senior Manager, Legal Service, to introduce the report.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, members of council. Chris Davis with Legal Services. The matter that's before you this evening is item 5.3. It's on pages 92 to 95 of the material I have. It's directed towards Section 508 of the Municipal Government Act, which is a provision that allows any council in a tax complaint matter to proceed to file an intervenor status, to attend, appear, and make representations before the governing body, which now is the Land and Property Rights Tribunal, used to be the Municipal Government Board. And in this case, there's a bit of a history. It's in your materials. We're aware of 11 designated industrial property assessment complaints, so DIP complaints, filed by industry with the Land and Property Rights Tribunal. This has gone on commencing in 2019 to last year, and we expect there'll be some more coming up this year. Further complaints will be likely filed. While the procedural rules of that review body allow for us to have intervenor status, we're recommending that council invoke the statutory privilege that you have under Section 508 to further assure that we have status to proceed to be an intervenor. So it's a bit like an old expression of belt and braces. So we've got the opportunity to file, and we've been invited to do so by staff at the tribunal, and we have done so. It's a possibility that legal counsel for the industry may challenge our position because we haven't got a council endorsement. So this is really just ensuring that we have that security of a council endorsement. Council in 2019 did provide such an endorsement for the 2 interventions we did at that time. We're still in some new ground because the act and legislation changed in 2018. We used to do these appeals and processes internally. The province decided it would be a more efficient process on designated industrial property and linear assessments to do so at a provincial level. And certainly there's some economies of scale there, but there's also, being a new process, we want to make sure that we're at the table and that we have somebody who's sort of looking out for our RMWB interests, that they'll be there when the negotiating's going on between industry and between the province of Alberta provincial assessor. And the process contemplates that. We're just making sure that we do our due diligence and that we're a party to the process. The reports before you, the implications financially are that we're covering the cost of external legal, but more importantly, and this is the big important issue for council, the complaints themselves involve billions in assets, with the complainant's objective being a targeted reduction in assets and asset value in a range of anywhere from 5% to 50%. It really depends on the nature of the asset. A successful reduction in asset value will coincidentally reduce the ultimate taxes due and payable to the municipality. While we have considered this risk and we have established conservative reserves for the 2019, 2020, and 21 tax years, the complainant's tactic of accumulating multiple years of complaints means that the result of the current complaints is both a potential immediate negative impact on the past years, but will probably have precedential value and a continuing impact in 2022 and future tax years. The rationale here essentially is that we're asking for council authorization to be a complainant intervener pursuant to Section 508 of the MGA, and we remove that potential argument from the municipal tax assessment complainants that the municipality's intervener status is somehow invalid. And we have a form of motion that is recommended and is in the materials. And I'm here to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have any delegates for this item? All right, any questions from council? I'm not seeing any. Can I have someone make the motion? Councilor Grandison?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Be it resolved that the Council for the Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo, in finding that the interests of the public in the municipality or in a major part of the municipality are sufficiently concerned, hereby authorize the municipality to become an intervener in the 9 current land and property rights tribunal, LPRT in brackets, case from 2020 and 2021, and in any further complaints filed in 2022, all in accordance with Section 508 of the Municipal Government Act.
Thank you, Councilor Grandison. Can I have someone second the motion? Councilor Stroud?
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. I second that motion.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or debate points from council? Councilor Cardinal? Okay, now I'll call for a vote. All in favor? And is there any opposed? Not seeing any, is carried unanimously. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll now move on to capital budget amendments. I'd like to invite Susan McIsaac, Acting Manager, Accounting Services, to introduce the report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, my name is Susan McIsaac, and I'm the Acting Manager, Accounting Services. Administration is submitting one capital budget amendment for your consideration and approval. Council is the approving authority for capital budgets as per the provisions of the Fiscal Responsibility Policy, FIN 160. This amendment will result in a net increase in the capital budget and plan in the amount of $2,670,000. The funds will be drawn from the Capital Infrastructure Reserve. The amendment is seeking additional funding for a new capital project to perform rehabilitation work on the 35-year-old crossflow clarifier at the Fort McMurray Water Treatment Plant. The need for the work was identified by an integrity assessment, and the scope of work includes replacement of the sludge collection system and rehabilitation of the concrete tank. While the equipment is offline, work will also be performed on the upstream and downstream tanks. The design for the project was only finalized in December of 2021, which did not allow for enough time to include the project in the 2022 capital budget. Administration is recommending that the 2022 capital budget amendment, as summarized on Attachment 1, 2022 capital budget amendment, new project, net impact, dated May 10th, 2022 be approved, and that the revised cash flow of capital projects, as summarized on Attachment 2, 2022 capital budget amendment, new project, cash flow summary, dated May 10th, 2022 be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Do we have any delegates for this item? Thank you. And questions from council? Councilor Dogar?
Thank you, sir. Madam, very comprehensive one, what all I understood. But certainly there's a concern, it's a matter of money, taxpayers. What has been done so far and why additional money is asked? Are you, it was a bad planning that initially, that was not catered for, or making something additional?
Through the chair to Councillor Dokar, I will defer your question to the Director of Environmental Services.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good, Antoine.
Thank you. So the chair to Councillor Doga. So that update that we're proposing is to upgrade the Crosswalk Clive area. It's like a big pool, and it's dating from 1986. So over the last couple of years, we've been looking at some of the upgrades required at the water treatment plant, and we had identified that this piece of the treatment had not been updated since it was built in 1986. We didn't get the design in time to have the budget for the construction in the 2022 budget, and this is why we're coming today with the request now that we have the design well underway.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Dogar. Are there any questions from council? Councilor Benjoko?
Thank you, Mayor Bowman, and thank you for the presentation. My question is almost related to what Councillor Dogar asked. I was wondering if we have this in our long-term budget plans, maybe the 5 years or 10 years plan, or this was just a fund work, because like he said, it's a huge amount of money. So I was wondering, so you never saw this coming? There was, I know it's a 30-year-old equipment or plant and all that. So I was wondering if that was in our long-term capital budget plans at all.
Through the chair to Councillor Banjoko, what we've been undertaking at the water treatment plant is a life cycle assessment, and as part of our life cycle, and we are doing that with all of our assets. So as part of that life cycle assessment, we have been doing various assessments like risk assessments and everything. So in this particular case, the assessment didn't finish until after we had presented the capital budget. So that's why we're still bringing it forth, because it still needs to be completed. So it's not a make work program or anything, it's part of our whole life cycle assessment program.
So you knew this was coming, in essence?
We did, but as I said, we did not have enough information at the capital budget time to bring it forth. And because it is part of our essential services, we have to continue with the life cycling plan, because it is part of our essential services.
Okay, so thank you, CEO. So my question now is that at this point, do we know that this is going to cost us 2.6 million? Is this a guess, or is this a guesstimate or an estimate that has gone through RFP? What stage are we at for the 2.6? So can we be rest assured it's going to be 2.6?
Through the chair to Council Banjoko, we have had a design completed, and so when we do a budget for a life cycle project or for construction project, we will base it on the design estimates that came through. However, there has to be the caveat that there might be extra costs or higher costs. It depends upon supply issues, which we are experiencing at this time, but we will be putting it to market. But now that we know what the design has got to be. So it is our best estimate based on what we know needs to be done.
Okay. Did you build in like some, just to be sure that maybe 10% contingency plans, something like that, so that, I mean, I'm just wondering, so we don't get slammed with 3.5 or 4.2 million or something. Thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor Banjoka, we follow the typical pricing strategy for putting together a tender.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Joko. Councilor Cardinal?
Thanks, Susan, for your presentation. Through the chair to Susan, I guess. I just wanted to say thank you for finding out what we for our essential services, and I fully support the request, and great heads up, and look forward to hearing more. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Cardinal. Any questions from council? I'm not seeing any. I'm just assuming this cross-flow carrier is probably pretty important to the water treatment plant, so something it must do. So thank you, Susan. Do we have any delegates to this item? And can I have one of the councilors make a motion? Councilor Weigel?
I move that the 2022 capital budget amendment as summarized on attachment 1, 2022 capital budget amendment dash new project dated May 10th, 2022 be approved, and that the revised cash flow and capital projects as summarized on attachment 2, 2022 capital budget amendment dash new project dash project cash flow summary dated May 10th, 2022 be approved.
Thank you, Councilor Weigel. Have someone second the motion? Councilor Cardinal?
Thank you. I second the motion.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of council? I'm not seeing any. I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Not seeing any. It's carried unanimously. So thank you, everyone. That concludes tonight's public portion of tonight's meeting. Thank you for all that participated. We'll reconvene back in camera in 10 minutes. Thank you.